Welcome to eXp CultureCast, eXp Realty's official diversity, equity, and inclusion podcast. I'm your host, Cody Gilkison, the visionary leader behind eXp's DEI strategy. I believe that we all have a story to tell, and that's where this show really shines. We are a vibrant tapestry of diverse backgrounds and experiences, and that's our superpower. In each episode, we'll sit down with thought leaders, industry experts, and change makers who are driving meaningful conversations and actions in the realms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. From personal stories of triumph to deep dives into systemic challenges, CultureCast is your compass in navigating the complex landscape of DEI. This is CultureCast, the bi-weekly podcast about what makes us us. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of the CultureCast. You guys just saw the intro, but we just love doing this show, and we're happy to be back with some July episodes. And I'm thrilled to say that today's episode is about one of our most underserved communities. This episode is called Indigenous Identities, and I'm here with the brand newly minted co-chair of eXp Indigenous Network, Miss Jennifer Greenway. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's great to have you. So let's start off by letting you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your journey to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm rather new to eXp, and I'm actually the designated managing broker for the state of Georgia.
Nice.
But I've been in real estate for this is my 24th year. So I'm not new to this industry by any means, just new to eXp, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and now I live and have lived for over 30 years in the great state of Georgia.
That's fantastic. Whereabouts do you live in Georgia?
I live in Powder Springs, which is West Georgia.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Yeah, and it's actually a really cool place for me to live because and I'll probably tell the story a little. It's really where all of my indigenous family members lived for, I don't know, thousands, millions of years. Don't know yet, but I don't know if we will ever know that. But it's really a great place for that.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm a fellow Georgia boy. We've been having a lot of Georgia people just by coincidence on the CultureCast lately. But yeah, I was born and raised in Georgia, lived there for the first 23 years of my life. So yeah, I'm from Barnesville, Georgia. It's if you looked at the map of Georgia, it's like the exact center. It's a little nothing burger of a town. But I liked it that way. It's good to have a small town upbringing, you know.
Absolutely. I had a big town upbringing. So I had a big town upbringing and moved to Atlanta right before the Olympics were coming in 96. I moved here in 95. So it's almost 30 years ago, exactly. And I love it. And it's just been home ever since. So I appreciate the small town feel, close to the big city. And Georgia's great. It's a very friendly place to do business. And it's an awesome place to be a realtor. And it has never disappointed. So
it really is, and more culturally diverse than people realize.
Very, very diverse.
Really is. Yeah. So, what led you to eXp Indigenous Network and to seek out a leadership role there?
Well, we had you come during June when we hosted One eXp, and you led that conversation to our state meeting. And so I was introduced to One eXp then. I really didn't know anything about it at all. And I was doing my research prior to and learning because I didn't even know that was a thing. And so I think there's one opportunity right there, right? And then I noticed that this Indigenous Network needed a co-chair. And I said, well, I would love to be a part of that. I would love to be able to help. I have the resources, and being on staff, I think, really helps for that understanding and maybe having a good resource there by being an agent and a staff member. So I just reached out to you and said, hey, I saw this. What do I need to do? How can I help?
And I said, oh, thank God.
Please.
And, when she's talking about having 1EXP come into your state meetings, if you're listening to this and 1EXP hasn't appeared at one of your state meetings,
do it.
Call me.
Do
My
it.
phone number's here. I can go. Let's
It was
do it.
fantastic. It was so cool. And I learned so much. We all learned so much. It was a great attended meeting, and what a unique value proposition for EXP. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in any other brokerage firm, which is incredible.
Right. Yeah. And we were intentional about crafting that mission and vision for 1EXP because lots of other firms have a goal to be as diverse and inclusive as possible. But our goal is specifically to be the best at this.
Yeah.
So says it all, right? We're really trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the title of the show, Indigenous Identities. What does having an Indigenous identity mean to you personally? And how does that sort of shape your everyday life?
That's such a great question. So from the time I was a little girl, I'm a Cherokee Indian, and my dad, was one of 9 children, and he was second to the youngest of 9. And he grew up, in Oklahoma, where most Cherokees reside or have at some point in time. And so he was raised as an Indian. I mean, he didn't grow up on a reservation, but he did grow up on the land that was given to his ancestors or his family members when they walked the Trail of Tears from literally where I live today. Like, they probably walked across my yard. I don't know. So I was raised to be very proud of that, and to know that we really, there's so many people that like to say, I'm related to Pocahontas. That's kind of the story. I'm an Indian princess, or I'm in the lineage, but I was raised that way. And so I learned about my culture and was taught to be very proud of that culture. And my dad actually worked in some government affairs committees and things like that for equal rights for all Indigenous people. So I'm very familiar with what something like 1EXP, or specifically the Indigenous Network, can do for recognition, inclusion, and keeping our heritage alive. And I think that that's one of the things that's really, really important and very fun. I remember, this is just a funny story, but this was just part of, and I've handed this down to my children as well, but having that identity made it fun growing up as a kid, because when we would drive up to the mountains, because my grandmother had a cabin, my dad would say, now girls, I had sisters, get your Indian eyes out and see if you can see any deer, because you're special vision, and it was it just made us feel special. And it made us feel, unique. And we would tell our mom, she's English, 100% English. And we would say, not you, Mom, you have white eyes. You can't see. I don't know, but it made, we would laugh. Right. But just having that with you and carrying that through. And my children are registered Cherokee Indians as well. Mm-hmm. And so I've never filled out any paper in my entire life as anything but Native American.
Right.
And that, to me, I'm so proud when I get to check that. And when I have the opportunity to share that, I love to share that. It just makes you feel special. It also makes me feel very connected in that community and connected with other people who are also Indigenous, regardless of what that means, right? I think you and I spoke about, that's Hawaiian. Mm-hmm. That's anybody who's Indigenous to their land. And so I just have a great feel for that.
Yeah, I love that. I always was to be honest with you, a little jealous of Native identities, because you have such a great connection to your culture and this great community you can tap into, and this real sense of there's something very earthy and mystical, you know what I mean? like something very grounded and real that I've always been a little jealous of. I'm an adopted person, so I grew up until maybe I was in my 30s, not knowing what my cultural identity was. So I would daydream about being able to connect to something in the way that I saw natives doing, right?
Like I love to see pictures of old pictures of natives and study their history and find out more about that. And my family's been big in lineage. And so we've traced ourselves back all the way as far back as you can with census and learning about all of those types of things. And, recently, which is really interesting, there was a big movie, right? That just came out in regards to some things that took place with the government outside that we didn't even realize happened. Those are just really interesting things. And I couldn't wait for that movie to come out, and I wanted to see it. And then this weekend I watched another movie about a young girl who grew up on a reservation. And I'm just drawn to it because I feel like she's my family. I feel like those were my people, even if we weren't blood related, we're related.
Yeah. I'm watching a show now on Amazon Prime called Outer Range. I don't know if you've heard of this show. So
I have, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, so it's a very quirky sci-fi Josh Brolin show where he's essentially this farmer that discovers a hole in his yard and that in one of his pastures that you can go through time if you fall into it.
Oh, I know all about that one. I do. My fiance is obsessed with that show.
Yeah.
That show.
There was a moment in a recent episode where the sheriff of the town where they live is this woman named Joy, who is 100% Shoshone Indian, and runs headfirst into the hole, not knowing what it is, and appears in 1889 amongst her people and lives for 4 years there. And it just struck me as like, oh my God, like here in 2024, we practice the ceremony of everything and try to emulate life as it was back then, but she got to live in it. Like that was, I don't know, it was really cool to me.
Yeah, that's a fantasy. That's a dream of mine for sure.
Yeah,
that's
it's cool. Also terrifying because the 1880s were terrifying, right? Particularly for Native people as their land was being taken. But it would be really something to see what it would be like to live sort of the earth as they were then.
Yeah, very different, right?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about representation in movies and TV and film, but what about representation in the real estate industry? What do you see there? Is there anybody there or any, to me, it seems like we just don't have a lot of representation for this community in the real estate industry. Is that true?
I would say most certainly. I mean, look at the biggest struggle of our people of all time is real estate, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And they owned all of the real estate. They owned the entire country. It was theirs, but they never claimed ownership because they didn't own the land. It was given, right? Mother Earth. And so they didn't own anything. And in fact, I think that even concept of land ownership, it's not even a part of the language. It's not a part of any of that. So that was all changed, right? Through all of those great migrations and moving everybody and giving them the area territories all over. So no, there isn't in anybody that pops up, thinks about like, there's nothing, right? In regards to real estate with Indigenous people. And I'm even seeing this right now. If I go back to Hawaii for a minute, in Maui right now, and through Lahaina, where the fires destroyed that community. And Lahaina was definitely populated by Hawaiians and islanders, Indigenous people, and that has been taken away from them. The homes that they lived in were passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. The land there and the land ownership and the homes, they'll never be able to afford to rebuild in that particular area anymore. It's way out of their abilities from a financial standpoint, and so there's a fight to be fought there for sure. keeping the land with them and not just saying, oh, well, you can't afford to, move somewhere else. Well, there's limited resources on an island. There's limited places to go. And so it's just very interesting. So the answer is no. I just don't. Could there be? There absolutely could be.
Right.
I don't know if it's ever been a part of the culture.
Right.
Ownership.
Mm-hmm. So, could you share like what's like the mission and vision in your mind for EXP Indigenous Network, and what do you think some of the key goals are with this being a relatively new group on the 1EXP scene?
I think it's growth first. I think it's just getting it out there that this is an opportunity to come together as many different cultures, but it just as Indigenous people, and whatever that is for you, coming together and having that identity. And this is something that Indigenous people know better than any other group, but just bringing it forth, right? Launching out and saying, hey, we exist. We need more members. We want to get together. We want to be collective, and we want to have a good time with one another and celebrate each other's cultures, show us what it's like, and share. And I think that's what Indigenous people do the best. They love to share and host and share their culture with other people through all things. So I think the vision is, and I can't wait, it's like, who's going to be at EXPCon? Making sure that people are aware that we exist, and we want to know what your history and your background. You don't have to be a full-blooded anything. I'm not full-blooded, but do you identify as being Indigenous, right? And we want you to be a part of this community, because it would be really fun. You and I talked about, right, hosting some virtual events so we can get together in real life. And then when we're together in real life, we'll host other events and make it fun, because, hey, we can have a lot of different things. I am a party girl, and I love to throw parties. And I would love to have a powwow and have a luau and celebrate all the different diversity and all the different things. And I think that we can do that, celebrate and learn and come together, support one another, and then then once we grow, let's figure out how we can make an impact and what we can do to help our communities where we are, right? With home ownership. That's the whole piece. We could help each other and stamp out some things for home ownership seminars, and maybe opportunities for grants or financing, and start educating within our own communities home ownership, and lead and be real specific around that. I think there are some other really great groups of people that do that, and this is an opportunity for us to do the same.
Absolutely. And also add here that, the Indigenous community within EXP may be small, but it certainly is mighty. And one of the ways that we can grow this community is to appeal to the allies of Indigenous peoples. You don't have to be even a little bit Indigenous. If this message sounds like something that you can relate to, or that you can learn from, or these communities sound like something you want to know more about, or if you have a seat at some tables that Indigenous voices aren't currently sitting at and want to signal boost, I will always be a proponent of that. Come into Indigenous Network, share the message of what they're doing, and you could help propel this to the future.
Absolutely. Maybe, helping people learn and be educated, and bringing a platform for that is huge. There's opportunity for anybody of any ways to procure business. Hey, we're all here for business, and make great connections along the way. I love that. Yeah, you don't have to be, identified. You just may see an opportunity here, and we need help, right? We all need more helping hands.
Right. That's exactly it. If you feel like you're a wealth of knowledge and you could help Indigenous peoples, come on in. Here's a group of them. Right? Yes. That's we love that here. I Want to ask next about the challenges faced by Indigenous real estate agents. What do you say is the main challenges that people who are Indigenous, who are in our industry, face?
I think that probably is a real, I don't even know if that's it may be a cultural thing, like I had mentioned before, right? Because I think culturally ownership and being in the field of home ownership,
It's a weird concept. Yeah.
it's not familiar. It's not even the way it's supposed to be. And so right? So that's a challenge. How can we help educate and provide those platforms? I don't know if being a realtor or being in real estate is necessarily a challenge. I think it's an opportunity. One of the things that may be about with Indigenous, it just depends on where you grew up, and what your education is, and the exposure to the ability to get into our industry. And that's probably a really big, I just had an aha moment, like, there's something that I would love to do. Let me come and talk to you about this incredible opportunity where you can
that you
help.
may not have considered. Yeah.
Right. You can help other people. In fact, you too can be a realtor, right? You can get this education and help provide this service and change. So I'm going to say, just giving back, there's a little bit of undertone, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to use it. And I think this goes across really the human race. But when you're born in a suppressed environment, and oftentimes Indigenous people are born into a suppressed environment, and if you've gotten out of that suppressed environment, you want to stay away from that suppressed environment, because it brings up a lot of things for you. So I'll go back to my dad's story and how he was raised in a 2-bedroom house with a dirt floor. And they were definitely had a lot of stereotypes. And, they didn't wear shoes to school, and they came and went as they wanted to. And education wasn't at the forefront of their community. And for him, and there was a lot of that built into he and his siblings. To my dad's story always was, I would say when I was a kid, why don't we ever go camping? And he'd go, I grew up camping. I camp at the Hyatt. I'm never going back, right? And all of his brothers served in the service, and that was their ticket to get the heck out of what they were born into to the next thing. And so, I think sometimes that's a challenge for Indigenous people, is once you get yourself out of. Now, a lot of people go back and give back, right? We see that all the time with celebrities or athletes that go back and give back. And I'm sure that exists in Indigenous people, but for a lot of that, that can bring up a lot of I don't want to go back.
Yeah. Distancing yourself kind of feel.
Yeah. And so that's,
I can relate to that. I can very much relate to that. We talked about the small town upbringing, but growing up queer in South Georgia in the 90s I was not a popular person, right? It was not it was not very happy upbringing, to be honest with you. And there's lots of it that makes me say, I'll never go back.
Right? I don't want to go out there. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I think engaging in things like this, like One EXP, and in these cultural environments where we can embrace who we are and identify with other people and be proud of that. This is the shift and change in our entire world, isn't it? I mean, honestly, it's a shift. And my son is gay, and he struggled with that. He's almost 23 years old, but as a kid, he struggled. And we were talking recently, and he said, Mom, things are so different than they even were 5 years ago. Because we would talk when he was younger, and it was like, that's a hard road that he would struggle, like, it's is this going to be hard for me to live in be Southern with all my Southern cousins and, all athletes and athletics is everything, masculinity and hunting and fishing and just all of those things. But the world has changed. There's been a great shift. And it's things like this and these networks and embracing your diversity and coming together and being proud of what it is that changes the landscape for everyone, right? Sure. Hollywood changes it for us. Like, show us more. I mean, look at Yellowstone. Who wanted to go to Wyoming 5 years ago? Oh. Wyoming. Now you can't book a trip.
Now you can't book one, right?
Cowboy and an Indian, right? And I want to go and do that. And so it's like Hollywood is changing. I mean, we're just changing. We're just changing and evolving. It's beautiful. And I'm excited to be a part of that.
It's funny how Hollywood does that too. Then I remember watching the show Ozark, and then all of a sudden the trip to the Ozarks went crazy. And the show did not paint the Ozarks in a nice light, but it still made tourism go crazy.
In the Ozarks, right? And it was all filmed in Georgia, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Same thing with Walking Dead. There's Walking Dead tourism in Georgia. Back where I'm from is where they filmed most of the first season.
Right.
So people are coming and looking at fields like, oh, this is where whatever happened. It's so strange. Yeah.
But it is fun. I think that we can make that movement happen. And I think this is an incredible opportunity and great platform. And kudos to you, Cody, for taking the charge on it and being passionate about it. I think that it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And it can change a lot of people's lives.
We're really trying. And, I don't know. I think I'm a born advocate. I've always wanted to advocate for other people and learn more about other cultures. That's the whole point of this show, is for me to learn more about other cultures. And by the way, everybody's invited along for the ride, right? Yeah. I learn a lot from everybody that I have on this show. I'm learning a lot from you today about Indigenous identities and how I can relate to them, because that's an important piece. Listen to these stories and think about how you would feel in that situation, or if you've been in a situation that's similar, right? Sometimes the stories are very dissimilar from what you may have lived through, right? But there still is a bit there that you can emotionally resonate with if you've got a human soul residing in your body, right?
It's so interesting too, because I was talking to one of our agents. I noticed that she had posted something about a powwow, and I reached out to her. I said, "Are you Native?" And she said, "I am." And we had a phone conversation about that. And her experience growing up Native was so different than mine. Mine was fun. I got to get out of school with the other, my sister and some other kids that were Native and go to Indian school 1 day a week when we were growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 70s. I mean, this was pretty cool stuff, and learn how to basket weave and make fry bread and do all the things. And I've always been so proud and raised in a different way. Her experience, not the same. She was born on a reservation and was an orphan until the age of 14. And it was tough and hard. And she did not know her lineage. And she didn't know all the things that I know. And for her, it's kind of like that, sayonara, see you later. I got off that reservation, deuces. And so I'm working on her. I'm going to get her involved in our network and hopefully see it a little bit. She's a powerhouse. She's a real powerhouse. And I was like, of course you are Native. Look at you. You're amazing. So this is just an incredible platform.
Yeah, we love it. I think, the power that this network is going to be able to have is so huge. And, it really can only work with a leader behind there that really wants to push the envelope and do the work. And I really believe in you, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm excited. It's something different. It's like I can be in real estate and do my real estate gig, but this is like passion. This is it's really, really, really neat. And I'm proud of it. And my family's proud of it. They think it's really cool that this is an opportunity. So
can't wait to see this thing grow.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. All right. So back to the agenda here.
Yes.
What are some misconceptions that you think people have about Indigenous identities that you'd like to address?
Well, I think there's a couple, right? I think that, and this just, maybe some of them are, realities. I don't know if they're misconceptions or not. I think first and foremost, I think a lot of people think that they're Indigenous when they're not.
Mm.
However, what's cool about that is they want to identify with it, like you had said, right? Like people want to identify. So that part is really neat. I would say do your 23andMe and do your ancestry.coms and find out where you are and where your people come from, because I think that's really fun. I think one of the misconceptions is that they're uneducated, that they don't have the resources to purchase real estate, right? Or they haven't had the higher educations necessarily. And so I think and that they're used to living in poverty and that they're poverty stricken. That is definitely, and there could be haves and have nots. Again, I think we kind of go back to when you get out, you get out.
Mm-hmm.
So there creates your have and have nots, and there could be a bridge there somewhere. But I think that there's a lot more Indigenous people like me who, I'm not the have or the have not. I'm somewhere in between.
Right.
And so
stereotype there, yeah.
Yeah, and just identifying and finding out who you are, what your tribe is.
Yeah.
The word tribe is really interesting. That people, it's a real catchphrase. Find your tribe. Who's your tribe? And that's fun because we have actual tribes, and we have tribes inside of tribes. You belong to a nation, and then you have your tribe inside of your nation. So, and they all had different languages, which is very unique and interesting. Different dialects.
America is a big, big place.
Big.
Yeah.
A very big place. So
think about it without the state lines as one big. It's so big. Yeah.
It's so vast, and look at the differences in climate that we have within our own, right? Within our,
Yeah. Think about the difference between a native Alaskan and a native Kansan and a native Floridian. They couldn't.
Right. They even look different. They look like an Eskimo, right? Someone who's Eskimo has one look as opposed to someone else. Yeah, it's very interesting to see all that and their traditions and just all of the things. But I think that's a misconception, possibly. And then also that Indigenous people are novel, that they and not understanding that there was actually government and hierarchy and very intense ways of living and doing their own life and having their own ways of handling controversy, right? Resolution, and things like that. And the other misconception I'll say, which is really funny, is everybody thinks if you are Native American, you get money from the government. Do you get your check every month? I'm like, no, I don't get that.
Yeah.
Who's giving us money? Now, I will say there are a lot of funds out there for Indigenous people. But you just have to seek that out. But there's scholarships for people to get education. There are grants for you to start businesses. There's all kinds of really great resources. But no, nobody's sending me a check on a regular basis.
Right. And I lived in Syracuse, New York for 10 years, and the Indigenous population there is so rich.
Yes.
And not rich financially, but you know what I mean? Rich in depth and color and that sort of thing. But there were people there who would get a check, but they were working for the nation. Right. So that it's a paycheck. That's not a government handout. You know what I mean? But they were judged based on that. I think it might be a blanket statement, and I know there are many, many, many different racial and ethnic identities who face a lot of stereotypes. But I think that Native American people are stereotyped in a way that is unique. They're characterized. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Right.
I think we grew up seeing Indigenous identities in cartoons or the depictions in media back in the day were not so robust and real. They were very, like, I think about
like a sidekick.
The awful Indian dance scene in Peter Pan, right?
Right.
Is so offensive, right? But that's sort of the view that was always given. And then we also see now a sort of a weird backlash in my community. The only major business in Danville was always factories, and now we don't have factories anymore. But what we do have is a Native American casino.
Right. Yeah, there are so many stereotypes. That's so funny. That is so, yes, if you're Native, you can open a casino.
Right. Yeah. So everybody in my community has this same stereotype that anybody that's Native in Danville is getting casino money.
They're all getting money from the casino.
What?
So crazy. But they were caricatures, right? They were novelty. They're mascots. We were definitely perceived as the mascot. There was the Lone Ranger and Tonto. Right. Look at the Braves, you know?
Exactly.
Right. You know, all of the things that they were, the Washington Redskins. They're no longer Washington Redskins. But those were all, they're very much characterized. That's a great way to put that. That is definitely like the pinhole around that. I think that, and it may just because I'm in tune with it, but I also think now, you know, being Western is more cool because of Yellowstone. So you're seeing some different things like the long hair, men with long hair and the man bun. Sorry, that's Native.
That's Native, yeah.
Native men didn't cut their hair.
Right.
You know, that was a sign of strength and masculinity was long hair, not short hair. Masculinity was long hair, and then somehow or another that became femininity.
I love the long hair. I wish I had the hairline for it. No, I don't look great with long hair, but I would rock it. I am here with that. I think it's power. I love to see a man with the mane, the locks. You know what I mean? Yeah. I also think there's a little bit there for the general public in America where they relate anything Native to a part of our history they'd rather not talk about. And so they just compartmentalize it and don't think about it at all.
Absolutely. We don't tell the real stories in the books. We don't tell the stories of what really, really happened because we don't want to admit that. We don't want to admit it, right? That Native Americans were also slaves. They were also traded in slavery. They were not free people, and they were lied to. They were given, you know, diseases were brought. They were wiped out. They were made promises and had to move, but you know, just
they had the sort of inherent every bit of inherent goodness in the culture was preyed upon.
Every single one. We trust you. We believe in you. You know, if they were made out to be wild, right? Like maniacs, like the devil. Those were the devil, you know, and they had dark skin, or they had, and all of those just a pure negative connotation. Alcoholics, drug addicts, big because they didn't have alcohol and drugs. And so when you introduce those things and it's different, those were probably your first alcoholics, like because their body wasn't even meant to function and didn't even know how to process. And that's a true fact that they don't have the same ability of processing until maybe it's been bred through, right? Or whatever, that, you know, didn't have those things. So that's a big stereotype, is the drinking piece. And drinking, and unfortunately, you know, that gets caught on the reservations and things like that, where gambling, alcoholism. I mean, you can't go to Oklahoma. You are like 2 steps into that state. There is a casino on every corner. And then we think it's fun when we go, but and we enjoy going. And you can go into a casino. I have to tell you, this is a funny story, Cody. So we were driving cross country. We stopped in Oklahoma to visit my family, and we go into a casino. And I've always been the one in like Lake Tahoe or Vegas to put on what I got to bring in the mighty winds. Okay, I got to bring in the mighty spirits on my slot machines, and I have a little routine that I would do that was handed down from my dad. Would, oh, mighty winds, come on, you talk to it, you give it to, and we'd say, you give it the hoochie goochie, okay? It's going to hit for you. And it would hit, and we would just die laughing. So we stop in Oklahoma, we go to this thing, and there are some natives in there that are gambling, and there is full-blooded, and he's standing there, and he's doing it, and he's putting it on there, and my husband at the time walked out, looked, and was just staring. And I caught him and I said, see, it's a real thing.
No, I'm not the only one. Yeah.
I'm not crazy. It worked.
That's brilliant. That's hilarious. I love that story. Actually, we're up to a question that we talked about earlier that I think is your favorite on here. Can you share a story or an experience that highlights the importance of understanding and embracing Indigenous identities?
Yes, I can. It is like my favorite question on there. And I'm a storyteller, as you can tell. And I do love to tell the stories of that. But and I've shared a couple of them already that were really fun. So I'm going to tell you this story. This is very unique. As I mentioned, my dad would travel and was for government for equal rights. And he was in the state of North Dakota. And in North Dakota, they had segregation amongst the whites and the Indians. And so they were out at a restaurant, and they still had the restrooms categorized at that point, men, women, Indians, and separate water fountains, whites and Indians. And my dad was dressed in a suit. He was a businessman. They went to lunch, and he went up to the counter just to prove a point, but he learned that the point was taken. And he walked up and he said, "Which restroom would you like me to use?" And the guy leaned over and said, "Are you causing some trouble with us here?" He said, "No, I'm just asking, which restroom would you like me to use?" My dad had jet black hair, black eyes, very olive dark complexion. He said, "I just think it's time for you to change these. I just think it's time. You don't need to keep, that's not history. That's not history. That doesn't prove any point. It's offensive to me." And that's the point that I wanted to prove to you, right? And in that environment it was still present. The prejudices, it was still present. It was still there in that environment. And so that's just one, story of that. The others is when I will tell you, this is because this is real estate related. I went to go take my broker's exam. This is like 17 years ago. And I see what you can bring with you as forms of identification anytime. And you can look at my paperwork. I'm sure it's with the EXP because I always use it. I use my card, my Indigenous card that says I'm a registered member of the Cherokee Nation, and my driver's license. And so, most people bring like your social security card or things like that. Well, this is my social security. I have a United States social security number too, but I have my special number as well. So I bought both of those to go take my broker's exam. And the lady's like, "What is this? We can't take this. This isn't identification." And I said, "Oh, but it is. It's on your list. It's on the list of things, always on the list of things for identification, is the card." And she was like, "I'm going to have to look this." She looked up, she says, "Well, here it is. I've just never seen this before." I take it to the DMV, like for everything. And so my son started a new job yesterday. He's also a realtor, and he started with a builder developer builder yesterday and had to do his paperwork. And I said, you need your identification. You're going to need 2 pieces of identification. And he goes, oh, I'll bring my passport, my driver's license. I said, no, bring your card, bring your Cherokee card and your driver's license. And he's always like, Mom, but he looks so native. I mean, he's got this, he looks just like me. So it's really fun. But those are some cool.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lesson to be learned there about, that from that woman's perspective, right? You don't right away just say we can't accept this. Check the list. Let me see if we can accept this. This is a proper response, right?
She's never seen one.
Right. Well, yeah, that's fine. She's never seen one, but
right, she had never seen it. She's like, we can't accept this. Oh, I've never seen that before. Well, it would be cool if you saw more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I used to work in the banking industry when I was in Syracuse, so I saw those cards when people would open accounts, but maybe not everybody did, I think that's something that they had to tell me to prepare for,
You're going to see these. You may have never seen it before.
You're going to see these. There, if anywhere you've ever worked before, you probably haven't, and it's at the very bottom of the list, but it is on the list.
It is a list. Check the list. Check the list, people.
Yeah, that's an acceptable
list. Yeah. By the way, there is a list that I don't know who's ever watching, and you think that you might be Indigenous, and you want to find out. There's a way you can, because you have to trace back your bloodline to what is called the Dawes Rolls, and it's DAWES. The Dawes Rolls, which is the last official census that the United States took of the 5 recognizable bands of Indians. And there were 5 different nations that were recognized at that time. You have to trace your bloodline back to that census. And then you have to prove, once you know who that was, you have to have the birth certificates of every single person on that in your bloodline.
Wow.
To prove that. And this is a crazy story. So my dad got into that, and he wanted to have all of his brothers and sisters. They didn't have cards. They didn't need cards when they grew up. Everybody knew those crazy Tootle kids. Those were, they knew who they were. They were wild Indians. So he's like, no, we have to be registered with the Cherokee Nation. So he found all of this out. He got all of his siblings registered. And he said, now you've got to get your children registered. It was a lot of work. But one of the things was they didn't have birth certificates because they were born at home. And there was no record of them. So he had been in the Navy. He went and served in the Navy. All of his brothers, as I mentioned, served during wartime. As a matter of fact, they all served during wartime. And they were brought into the United States Armed Services with no birth certificate. So at that time, thank goodness, at that particular time, my grandfather was still alive, and he had to go to the county, and he had to vow, he had to say, yes, these are my children. These are their names. They were all born on these dates. So I have my dad's delayed certificate of birth. And so you may have to get a delayed certificate of birth in order to prove those bloodlines. But if you can, it's a lot of work, and it's really cool when you do it.
Yeah, I bet sites like Ancestry.com help a bunch with that, because there's so many documents there.
Oh, so many documents. I wish that was the case then. Yeah.
That's cool. It's one of the, I've done my DNA, being an adopted person who now knows my birth family. I was able to trace my lineage back and stuff like that. And I can't tell you how disappointed I was to see no Native American on there. I can't tell you how disappointed. That's one of the
Heritage. What are you?
Scottish mainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could tell if I grew my very red beard in.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. But and Scotland's beautiful, but I'm an American, and I would like to identify as truly deeply American. I've always found myself sort of drawn to the idea of Mother Earth and to Native American symbolism and religion, and I've always been drawn to that kind of thing. When we would have festivals back home, I would be front and center waiting to see the Native dance, any of the tribal celebrations. I would be there sitting on the front row. Like, it's something that always fascinated me. I used to think when I was little I'm going to show my parents. I could not stand the church that I grew up in. And I kept telling my mom, I'm going to go join the tribe. And they were like, well, you can't. You weren't.
You can. We'll take it. You can't. You're in this tribe. You're in this tribe. Yeah. At some point, I'll have to do a video tour of my basement, because actually I finished out my basement, and it is it's Western themed. It has a lot of Native American things in there and collectibles. And my fiance is also a Cherokee Indian. And so he's fascinated with all of those kind of things too. So he helps collect and sees things, and he knows that I just love all of that. And for my birthday, he got me 2 statues of a Native man and a Native woman. And they're about, I don't know, 3.5 and 3 feet tall.
Wow.
And they're like carved, they're really, really, really neat. And so anyway, I have all kinds of fun things down there. I'll have to shoot it and share some of and pictures and things like that. So
yeah, that'd be great content for the Indigenous Network.
Yeah. Yes. Really, really fun. And I love jewelry. I'm a collector. My dad really got me hooked on. I have a lot of turquoise, a lot of things. This was a ring. Oh no, I didn't put it on. I put on a different ring. This was a ring. It's a little turtle, which is pretty symbolic. Got turquoise in there. Turtles are big in Native culture. And so I do have lots
of a stone. The people that know me in my personal life know I love a stone. I've got a whole thing of necklaces that I normally wear. They just don't look good with a polo, you know what I mean? But normally I'm wearing some kind of stone, and I believe in the spiritual significance behind this.
Yeah. I love that.
So as we wrap up, I always ask the same question at the end of this. It's been asked, how many episodes are we deep now, Morgan? 30. So this is the 30th time I'm going to be asking this question. If you were to be approached by someone whose first day at eXp Realty was today, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
That's a really good question, because I'm a freshie, right? I feel like I'm a freshie. I would say do your orientations.
Mm-hmm.
Attend your orientations. Don't skip it. Go back and rewatch. It's a lot, and we move really, really fast. And that can be really, really fun. And that can be really overwhelming. And it's not welcome to eXp, here's a fire hose. It's welcome to eXp, here is our entire line of fire hoses.
Yeah, here's our ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It is vast. So take a deep breath. You know what you know. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be stuff you don't know. And it's okay. Mm-hmm. We'll find out who can help you. Know where your resources are. Find your resources. Please connect to workplace. Please connect to workplace. Because that's the biggest way that we're going to communicate. And show up at your state meetings. Because what I like to say is, we're really good at drinking from the fire hoses. We have a lot of fire hoses, but we're going to shut some of those off, and we're going to give you like the drips that you need from each one to keep you abreast. And if something becomes interesting, then you can turn that hose on and go for it and find the person who's going to help you with that. But I think that's, a really big piece is just don't try to learn it all. You're not going to. You don't even need to, and things change all the time. But just find a resource, a couple of resources, and show up. Workplace, your state meetings, and maybe your weekly newsletter. Those 3 things help eat away at the vastness of everything. And then I say go to eXpCon. And I think there's a lot of folks who are like, it's expensive and I can't do that. And I'm like, it's not if you plan. It's expensive when you don't plan for things. But you have to think of things like that. That will help you understand the vastness. It will help you chomp away at things, and it'll help you connect, because in our world of a virtual brokerage firm, our industry in general, you can feel very isolated. And in our world of a virtual brokerage firm, you can then feel very isolated. But if you get plugged in with the state meetings or the all big agent meetings. Find your niche and connect, and then go to things like EXPCon.
Yep.
You'll feel more connected. You'll make connections. At the end of the day, for us as human beings, it's about connections.
That's it. That's something my great grandmother would call Rolodex. That's an outdated term for people that don't use Rolodexes anymore. But you have to have this idea of a filing system of who can help me with what, right?
Yeah.
And you use all these opportunities to do that. And at the end of the day, I also would implore people who are new at EXP to join 1EXP and find a group to join. Because if you have a question, these groups are built for that, for finding you the answers. They're filled with people who can be those 5-minute mentors and give you the answer you need and move on without being that formal, structured, sometimes paid mentorship that these people just want to help, right?
Yeah.
So find your tribe is our...
Hi.
Hey, look at us tying it all together. Find your tribe. And, if you come to EXPCon, I would implore you to spend some time at the 1EXP booth. If you're going to come and walk around the exhibit floor, you might find a booth here or there that you spend a few minutes at. Don't just walk by the 1EXP booth. Come and talk to us.
Yeah. We'll help you find your tribe.
We're going to figure it out. Yeah. If you can't find your tribe or you're not connected enough with your tribe, we can dig those plugs in deeper for you.
I think we just coined our catchphrase for the Indigenous Network.
Find your tribe?
Yeah.
Find your tribe. I love that.
So cool.
It's beautiful. Speaks to the mission.
It does. Thanks, Cody.
All right, Jennifer. This has been so great. And thank you for joining us. And
Absolutely.
For everybody, thank you for tuning in to CultureCast. We really love all of our listeners. And we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of CultureCast. If you have time, please be sure to scan the QR code on screen now and leave us a review on Glassdoor. See you next time on the next episode of EXP CultureCast. We are here celebrating National Black Women's Equal Pay Day, and I'm thrilled to have our newly minted VP of Industry Relations, Kendall Bonner, is here in the house. Hey, Kendall.
Hi.